everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I am in Kursk, a city of the heroes. This is the place where the greatest tank battle took place during the World War II. So buckle up and let's dive into some serious history and explore the city together. Let's go.
I'm getting late to my train again as usual. Today we are going to Kursk.
Hello everyone, it's me again and I'm catching up with my train once more. This trip happened spontaneously. As you can see, this time I came across an old train. I was traveling in an ordinary 4-seater compartment, but I was very lucky because there was no other passengers along the way. And quite by chance, I got tickets to a carriage designed for people with mobility issues. Just look at the spacious bathroom here. You won't find such amenities in ordinary wagons. Well, unfortunately, my way to the train station fell out at night, so I didn't get to admire the scenery.
Okay, I've just arrived in Kursk. So next I'll move to my hotel.
In the meantime, I've already arrived in Kursk. Getting out of the carriage and going down into the station tunnel, I realized that it was a bad idea that I had not slept all night because I was fighting the desire to go to the hotel and sleep all day. But then I wouldn't be able to show you the city. I usually don't show the stations and quickly leave them. But the Kursk railway station caught my attention. It looks monumental and in addition to its direct functions, serves as a monument to the railway workers who participated in the Battle of Kursk. The journey from the station to the city center takes a mere 15 minutes. I decided to head straight to the heart of Kursk. Here, I find myself in the city's core, near the iconic green shopping center and the familiar central market. From this point, I embark on my exploration. First, I encounter the monument to the fighters of the Soviet power, installed in 1967 on the site of the giant cinema, which stood there until the 1930s. This monument commemorates the proclamation of Soviet power in the Kursk province in November 1917. Adjacent to the monument stands a charming art object, a bear gifted to the city by the local craftsman. A bit further on, I came across a monument dedicated to the renowned clowns Yuri Nikulin and Mikhail Shuidin. This unique duo has been performing together for over 3 decades, and their sculpture captures the iconic scene from their famous number, Horses. Coincidentally, the Kursk Circus, a building that has endured hardship, stands right behind them. In 1996, a devastating fire destroyed the circus, leaving it with disrepair for years. There were even proposals to demolish it and replace it with a shopping center. However, in 2006, restoration work began, and after 5 long years, the Kursk Circus reopened its doors to visitors in 2011. Continuing my journey, I climb a hill surrounded by a hedge and emerge to find the magnificent Noble Assembly building of 1877 before me. At the end of the 18th century, this building stood alongside the Noble Assembly House and the adjacent theater. Judging by the information plaque, Emperor Nicholas II himself visited this location in 1902 during the large-scale military exercise held in Kursk. At that time, the building housed hospitals. On the theater stage, which was located in the building at that time, the renowned Serb actor Shchepkin Mikhail Semyonovich performed. This is evident from the plaque on the building. Today, the Kursk State Philharmonic and the Sviridov Concert Hall occupy this site. At various times, the legendary Russian singer Fyodor Chaliapin performed within these walls, while Vladimir Mayakovsky recited his poems. Just a stone's throw away from such a magnificent and imposing building of a noble assembly lies a ghostly house, with broken windows, dilapidated walls, and covered in scaffolding. It turns out that this is the oldest Kursk men's gymnasium, founded in 1808. Children of nobles, officials, and beggars studied here. with a few designated spaces for peasants' children. It was here that the serf Mikhail Shepkin, who later became an actor, graduated. Later, the famous composer Georgy Sviridov also studied here. During Soviet times, the gymnasium building was turned into a factory warehouse and neglected. Now, the local authorities are attempting to restore its historical appearance and plan to establish a museum of local history within it. I realized that I missed an intriguing building near the Philharmonic Hall and decided to return to show it to you. Behind the ventilation well, you can catch a glimpse of the brick 5-story mill building, constructed in 1907 by a merchant Dirogin in the heart of Kursk. In 1914, a 3-story grain mill was built adjacent to the mill where grain was processed. During the Civil War, the company was shut down. However, its work was restored during the Second World War, but only the walls of the buildings remained standing. Since October 2019, these structures have been recognized as cultural heritage sites. Guys, something happened that I really wanted to avoid. As soon as I walked away from the merchant's house, there was an air raid siren. It was the first time I found myself in such a situation, and according to the information that I knew in such a situation, I urgently needed to find a shelter. Due to the military operations taking place in the Kursk region, concrete shelters have been installed for people who will be caught on the streets by an air alert. I was lucky, and such a shelter was just not far from me. In addition, there are such information stands at the entrance which show how to act in an emergency situation. For my part, I will say one thing: it was very scary. I waited for a while in the shelter and then continued on my way. As I continued my journey, I couldn't resist the temptation to revisit the Philharmonic building. It reminded me of a delectable multi-layered cake adorned with richly whipped cream. I'm certain it looked even more enchanting in the evening. Unexpectedly on my way, I came across a memorial plaque and a foundation stone erected in honor of Saint Theodosius of the Caves, the founder of the renowned Kiev-Pechersk monastery. His name is associated with the earliest known reference to Kursk. Interestingly, this city is older than the Russian capital. The very first written mention of Kursk dates back to 1032. As I continued my journey, I encountered a beautiful monument commemorating the 700th anniversary of the icon of the Kursk root Mother of God. Designed by the architect Koikov, it was solemnly installed in 1995 on the high bank of the Tuskar River. These are the traditional locks that the newlyweds hang on their doors in the hope of a strong and enduring union. What would happen if such a lock were removed? Of course, this is a rhetorical question. Moving on, I arrived at a small observation deck overlooking the Tuskar River, offering a panoramic view of the railway district of Kursk. Situated in a lowland area prone to flooding, sometimes the inhabitants of this region resort to traveling by boat. Here lies the miniature Venice within Kursk. And just around the corner, I was treated to a breathtaking view of the Majestic Znamensky Cathedral, the primary temple of Kursk and possibly the entire region. From various angles, it appears more like an ancient castle rather than a traditional temple. This magnificent structure stands as one of the city's most captivating attractions, having miraculously survived numerous trials throughout its history. Next to the cathedral, you'll find the Church of the Resurrection of Christ. Constructed in 1875, it closed its doors in 1923 and served as an archive. After 80 long years, in 2004, an Orthodox service was finally held in the church once again, marking a significant moment in its history. The site where the Zinski Cathedral now stands was once home to the Kursk fortress. During the turbulent times of the Polish invasion, Kursk bore the brunt of the formidable 70,000-strong army led by Hetman Żołkiewski. Despite the overwhelming superiority of the Polish forces, the Kurians refused to surrender the fortress. During the valiant defense, the heroic defenders led by Voivode Yuri Tatishov vowed that if he survived, he would build a monastery on this site in honor of the Kursk icon of the Mother of God, the revered intercessor of the Kurians. Miraculously, they survived. The fortress stood tall, and their vow was fulfilled. In 1615, the wooden church of the Nativity of the Virgin was erected. Later, in 1649, the church was replaced by a sturdy stone structure that stood for nearly 2 centuries. However, at the dawn of the 19th century, the building began to crack, necessitating the dismantling of the cathedral. In 1816, in celebration over their victory over Napoleon, the construction of a new temple commenced, the very one we see today, which took 10 years to complete. During the Soviet rule, the cathedral initially functioned as intended. However, in 1932, the temple underwent a remarkable transformation, being converted into a cinema with 700 seats. There were even reports of a dance hall within the premises. The cathedral suffered significant damage during the Nazi retreat from Kursk, being set ablaze and barely surviving the subsequent restoration efforts. In the post-war era, the cathedral served as an October cinema until 1992, when it was once again transferred to the Orthodox Church and underwent restoration, reopening its doors to parishioners. Now, let's shift our focus to the Red Square of Kursk city. There stands an apartment building bearing the scars of the recent tragic events that unfolded the city. On the 4th floor, a drone crashed into the building, triggering an explosion. It's chilling to imagine the harrowing experiences of the residents who lived there. Opposite the entrance to Pervermaisky Park, a monument to Alexander Nevsky, a native of Kursk, stands tall. The figure of Alexander Nevsky is depicted in full height, perched on a white pedestal adorned with a gold-colored inscription that reads, "God is not in power, but in truth." The prince faces northwest, where numerous enemies converged on Russia. Next to the park lies another symbol of the Kursk region and the crown jewel of the Red Square, the House of the Soviets. Constructed in 1947 to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Great Revolution, this building stands as a striking example of the Soviet architecture from that era. Today, it houses the office of the Kursk Region Administration, and it continues to serve as an active hub. Central Square of Kursk owes its appearance to Catherine II, who approved the city's first urban development plan in 1782. Prior to this, the area was home to various buildings, but a devastating fire in 1781 reduced everything to ashes. Consequently, a red square was established on the site of the wasteland. Now, before me stand 2 buildings, almost identical, like the front gate welcoming visitors to the main streets of Kursk. On the right, we can find the city administration building, while on the left stands the Central Hotel. Lenin Street, formerly known as Moskovskaya, its original name, like many other Kursk streets, served as a directional indicator. Northbound along Moskovskaya, the street is almost straight, leading directly to the capital. After the war, when the city needed to be rebuilt from scratch, the decision was made to expand Lenin Street to 40 meters. However, the initial width of the street was only 25 meters. To accommodate this expansion, a hotel was constructed significantly to the left of the roadway, creating a wider sidewalk. The new red line of the street continued with the construction of another hotel, which was built to the left of the roadway, further widening the sidewalk. The new red line of the street continued with the construction of another hotel, which was built to the left of the roadway, further widening the sidewalk. All the new buildings on the left side of the street were constructed in a similar manner, maintaining the hotel's presence. On the right side of the street, where I am currently walking, the pre-revolutionary buildings have remained in place, preserving the city's historical heritage. The hotel continues with an apartment building, and on the ground floor, for many years, there was a deli number 1. In Soviet times, the deli was always bustling with people. The highlights of the deli was a cafe upstairs, where a spiral staircase led to a cozy space where you could enjoy freshly brewed coffee. The coffee was prepared in a shiny chrome-plated coffee machine, and rolls, sandwiches, and milkshakes were available. The milkshakes, in particular, were a treat, made with natural ice cream, crushed nuts, and without preservatives, sweeteners, or flavor enhancers. On my right hand, I stand in front of the Regional Department of Internal Affairs building, constructed in 1947 by architects Popov and Ivanov. Their project won the second place in a competition for the best residential and civil buildings in Soviet cities, with 266 participants from 83 cities. Interestingly, German prisoners of war participated in the construction of both the Kursk Police Department building and many other urban facilities. I arrived at the department store building, constructed in the early 1950s on the site of the post office building destroyed during the war. However, the building was relocated 15 meters in the quarter. The construction took place in several stages, and the final version of the department store occupied an entire block of the main street. Opposite the central department store stands the House of Books, an architectural gem built in the mid-1950s by a renowned Kursk architect, Teplitsky. It now stands as a city landmark, resembling the nearby Department of Internal Affairs building. In fact, it adorns the central street of Kursk. In 1995, an Italian company constructed a 5-story Kursk Bank building on the site of an old bookstore. This building stands out architecturally from its surroundings. Its mirror-lined walls reflect the Resurrection Ilinsk Church, which is partially obscured by the House of Books. The temple was built in 1768, slightly further from the red line of the street, which spared it from demolition during the construction of the House of Books. However, the bell tower, or rather its lower part, was demolished immediately after the war. Stepping inside the temple, one is greeted by a spacious and cozy atmosphere reminiscent of an ancient temple. Many parishioners believe that Saint Seraphim of Seroy imbues the space with such a serene ambience. I highly recommend exploring the temple's interior decoration. Adjacent to the church, on a small square, lies an unusual monument dedicated to Antovsky apple, a well-known and highly fragrant variety, renowned for its exceptional taste. This art object was installed in 2004. Before I conclude, let's take a moment to admire the church once more. I decided to move to the other side of the street to get a better view of the historical part of the city. Immediately, a series of intriguing houses came into my view. I would like to ask the historians in Kursk to let me know some of the interesting facts that these buildings are known for in the comments. It seems to me that they hold a story. By the way, have you noticed that the public transport in Kursk has its own color scheme? Local buses resemble long green grasshoppers scurrying along the streets of Kursk. On the right side of the street, in an old house with columns, stands a regional maternity hospital. This was unexpected to me. Usually, medical institutions are presented in a modern multi-story buildings, but here we have an old mansion. During the war, this facility served as a military hospital. Opposite the maternity hospital, the famous Russian composer Sviridov sits on a granite bench. It turns out that he was a native of Kursk region. Local street musicians claim this place and often organize their improvised concerts at the monument. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet them today. By the way, many monuments and art objects have information signs that can be scanned with QR codes to learn more about them. I think it's a great idea. From here, you can get a better look at the maternity hospital building. It's clear that many buildings on Lenina streets need repairs. Well, this magnificent palace isn't a merchant's house or a noble mansion. It's a modern shopping center. Kursk is filled with shopping malls like no other regional center. An interesting fact is that Kursk has the unspoken title of the Russian capital of shopping centers. The amount of retail space per person here is simply staggering, especially for a city with a population of less than 1 million people. In my humble opinion, this is more of a problem than a solution. But who asked me anyway? What are your thoughts on this? Is it better for people to spend their time in shopping malls, or rather in city parks, museums, or embankments? The answer seems obvious to me, but I know that there are other opinions. We can discuss that in the comment section. The name of this shopping center is Pushkin, just as pretentious as its appearance. I didn't go inside, but instead headed to the theater square. Here, we are reminded that Kursk is nearly 1,000 years old, just a little more, and it will be the 1,000th anniversary. This is no joke. On the left is the Pushkin Drama Theater itself, whose monument also adorns the theater square. The history of the Kursk theater is long and dates back to 1729. However, the modern theater building was opened in 1983. The roof of the theater is decorated with a statue of the goddess Nika, honoring the theater's victory in the Great Patriotic War. In 1911, the theater was named after Shepkin, but after the theater's renovation in 1937, it was renamed after Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin. A monument to the great poet was erected in Kursk on the 200th anniversary of his birth. The monument depicts the heroes of Pushkin's work on a high granite pedestal. Near the theater, you can often see open-air exhibitions. This place seems perfect for them. There is a musical fountain on the square next to Pushkin. It was opened to replace an old fountain on one of the city's days. During the day, it doesn't attract much attention, but its charm comes alive in the evenings when the trickles of water are illuminated in 39 different modes. Children especially love this place on hot summer days. Well then, the building you're unlikely to miss stands out as a bright turquoise spot against the backdrop of nondescript, harsh Soviet high-rise buildings. This is a teacher's seminary where primary school teachers were trained. And here is something ordinary, just an apartment building, but it looks pleasant, especially with the rose bushes surrounding it. Wildflowers are generally a welcome sight in Kursk. The trees on the main streets are quite disappointing. Firstly, there are an inexcusable low number of them, and most of the remaining ones are severely damaged by incompetent gardeners. On my right, I noticed an intriguing building with unique architecture constructed in 1897 for the Provincial Land Bank. It now houses a branch of the Central Bank of Russia. It's quite common for banks to occupy the most prominent locations in Russian cities. This building is recognized as a cultural heritage site of the Kursk region. It's fortunate that it's in good condition and adds a touch of charm to the main street. My walk along Lenin Street came to an end, and I found myself on Perekalsky Square. The elite residential building that completes the main street of Kursk looks straight at the square with its historical facade, and on its wall there is a memorial plaque mentioning the Soviet colonel Perekalsky, who died during the liberation of Kursk. The square is named after him. This house has another interesting object, a genre monument called Date. It was installed in 2013. He represents the figure of a young man inspired by love and in a hurry to meet his beloved. In his hands, the young man holds a large bouquet of wild flowers, although in the original version, it should have been roses. And I go on straight to the building of the Kursk State Medical University. It also overlooks Perekalsky Square with its main facade. This building has a very curious history. Until 1929, the building housed a correctional prison. Then until 1935, there was a factory school. And then the local authorities decided to give it to a medical institute. In 2000, a monument to medical workers who died during the war was erected near the main facade. The old Philharmonic Hall is directly opposite the medical institute. The main decoration of the building is square columns supporting the balcony and huge windows. This building on Perekalsky Square has changed a lot of owners in its lifetime. Now, it's an operating Philharmonic Hall, and as you can see, the building is under renovation. Next to the Philharmonic Hall, there are several busts of people's artists of Russia, and in the square near the Philharmonic Hall, there is a monument to the writer Konstantin Vorobyov. The composition of the monument is unusual. The writer froze against the background of a wall on which fragments of peaceful and military memories are imprinted. Leaving the central district of Kursk, I decided to go to the observation deck, which is located on the roof of the shopping center near Perekalsky Square, and take another look at this part of the city. After that, I left the central district of Kursk and moved to Victory Avenue in Patriot Park, which was opened in 2019. On April 27, 2007, by decree of the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, the city of Kursk was awarded the honorary title of City of Military Glory, and already on April 22, 2010, the Stili, Kursk, the City of Military Glory, was opened. And in the distance, you can see an unusual power line. At first, I did not understand what it was, but then they explained to me that this was another tribute to the symbol of the region, the apple. Today, the park has grown significantly and received a well-deserved renovation. Here in front of me is a monument to Marshal of Victory, Georgy Konstantinovich Zhukov, whose merits in the Second World War are known not only in Russia. Georgy Konstantinovich is made in full height, and his creators were Kursk sculptors Igor Minin and Vladimir Bartyeniev. And right behind the monument to the Marshal stands the Triumphal Arch, built by the former governor of Kursk in 2000. Its height is 24 meters, and the upper platform is crowned by the figure of St. George the Victorious. Russian soldiers are depicted at the foot of the arch, and texts glorifying the Russian military spirit of all times are on the walls. This is how the arch, dedicated to the victory over fascism, looks from the reverse side. Well, then we see the slender and majestic church of St. George the Victorious. The temple was conceived as a monument to the soldiers who died in the battles of the Kursk Bulge. It was laid in 1998 on the 55th anniversary of the Battle of Kursk. The construction was completed in 2008. The temple is crowned with a gilded dome in form of a crown. Inside the temple, around the perimeter, there are about 7,000 marble plaques with the names of those who died on the Kursk Bulge in the Great Patriotic War. Not far from the temple, there is a memorial obelisk on which it is written, 443 Soviet citizens were shot here during the occupation of the city of Kursk by the Nazi invaders. And below it is added in Hebrew, in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. They were killed in this place by the German Nazis. Their only fault is that they were Jews. With this, I finished my walk in Kursk, but not in Kursk region. I will go deep into the region. In many places of the region, fighting is currently underway, so moving along highways in some places is problematic and sometimes dangerous. But this is a topic for a completely different story. In the meantime, I ask you to subscribe to my channel and like this video as a sign of gratitude for my blogging efforts. I'll see you very soon in the following videos.